Student loan crisis just entered a dangerous new phase. For the first time in 5 years, the Department of Education is restarting involuntary collections, which is just a bureaucratic term for taking your money without permission, meaning now after a 5-year pause, the debt collection machine is firing back up and it's hungrier than ever. Let's be honest, we all knew this was coming. The pandemic era pause on student loan payments couldn't last forever, but what's happening now goes far beyond just asking people to start making payments. So we're talking about the government potentially seizing your wages, tax refunds, and even your pension without your consent. Now, do I think this will actually happen? Doubtful, but to even think it's possible is insanity, and the timing couldn't be worse. With inflation still eating away at paychecks, the used car market is ridiculous and housing costs through the roof. Millions of Americans who were already struggling to make ends meet are about to get hit with a financial gut punch they can't dodge. But here's what fascinates me. Nobody's talking about the real story behind this decision. It's not just about collecting debt. It's about a fundamental shift in how our government views its relationship with citizens who pursued higher education. Stay with me, because understanding this shift might be the key to protecting yourself from what's coming. According to the Department of Education, around 5 million Americans with defaulted student loans will be affected when collections restart on May 5th. That's 5 million people who could suddenly find their paychecks lighter, their tax refunds gone, or their retirement funds tapped. The White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt made it crystal clear in her statement: the government can and will collect defaulted federal student loan debt by withholding money from borrowers' tax refunds, federal pensions, and even their wages. Let's break down what that actually means. Under the Treasury Offset Program, the government has the right to withhold 100% of defaulted borrowers' tax returns, 15% of federal salary, and 15% of Social Security. They're not asking for permission, they're just taking it. But wait, you might be thinking, I'm not in default, so this doesn't affect me. Well, that's where things get interesting. A loan is considered in default if you miss payments for 270 days, which is about 9 months. With the economic uncertainty we're facing, that threshold isn't as far away as you might think. The Education Department's announcement came with some pretty strong language. Secretary Linda McMahon stated, American taxpayers will no longer be forced to serve as collateral for irresponsible student loan policies. She went on to claim that the Biden administration misled borrowers. The executive branch does not have the constitutional authority to wipe debt away, nor do the loan balances simply disappear. Is it crazy still to anyone else? Vince McMahon's wife is the Department of Education head. This rhetoric reveals something important about how the current administration views student debt, not as an investment in America's future, but as a burden on taxpayers that must be recouped at all costs. Now, I'm not here to tell you which political party has the right approach to student loans. What I am here to do is help you understand what's happening and what it means for real people. People are already thinking that the interest for student loans is absurdly high. It genuinely seems like at times everyone benefits from student loans except students, who increasingly are finding it difficult to find jobs. The government makes billions off of debtors, and the colleges are allowed to charge whatever they want, regardless of which party is in power in Washington. I can understand charging some interest because it was a loan, but 7.8% is almost criminal. This gets at something fundamental about the student loan crisis that often gets overlooked in policy discussions. The issue isn't just about whether people should repay what they borrowed. It's about a system that seems designed to keep borrowers in debt through high interest rates and limited repayment options. Think about it. If you borrow $30,000 for college at 7.8% interest and make the minimum payments, you'll end up paying back far more than you borrowed. And if you struggle to find a job that pays enough to cover those payments, well, now you're on the path to default and involuntary collections. But here's where the story gets even more concerning. The announcement about restarting collections comes as scores of federal student aid employees have been terminated at the Department of Education. Former Undersecretary of Education James Cavall told ABC News, the concern is that the department is cutting the people who would help borrowers make this transition. Borrowers who are trying to get help by getting into an affordable repayment plan or by applying for loan forgiveness if they're eligible just don't have the same resources that they did before the department staff was cut in half. So, at the exact moment when borrowers need the most help navigating their options, the support system designed to provide that help is being dismantled. It's like removing the lifeguards from a beach right before a hurricane. And now I want to be clear about something. I'm not suggesting that people shouldn't repay their student loans. What I am suggesting is that we need to have an honest conversation about whether our current system is actually designed to help people succeed or to extract maximum profit from their pursuit of education. The federal student loan portfolio is nearly $1.6 trillion. That's trillion with a T. And according to the White House, fewer than 4 out of 10 borrowers are currently in repayment. That's a staggering statistic that should make us question whether the system is working as intended. Let's take a step back and think about why we have federal student loans in the first place. The original idea was to make higher education accessible to all Americans, regardless of their financial background. Education was seen as a public good that benefited not just individuals, but society as a whole. But somewhere along the way, that vision got corrupted. Tuition costs skyrocketed, far outpacing inflation or wage growth. States cut funding for public universities, shifting more of the burden onto students. And the loan system itself became increasingly complex and punitive. The result, a generation of Americans who did exactly what they were told to do. get an education only to find themselves trapped in a cycle of debt that many will never escape. And now, with the restart of involuntary collections, the government is doubling down on a punitive approach rather than addressing the underlying issues that led to this crisis in the first place. But what if there's another way to think about this? What if, instead of viewing student debt as a personal failure, we recognize it as a systemic problem that requires systemic solutions? Countries like Germany, Norway, and Finland offer free or very low-cost higher education to their citizens. They see education as an investment in their future workforce and economic competitiveness. And while their tax systems are different from ours, the principle remains the same. Education benefits society, so society should help bear the cost. Even if we're not ready to go that far, there are more modest reforms that could make a big difference. The White House press secretary's statement that if you take out a loan, you have to pay it back, very simple, ignores the complex reality that many borrowers face. It's not just about personal responsibility, it's about a system that sets many people up to fail from the start. The student loan crisis didn't happen overnight, and it won't be solved overnight either. But by understanding the forces at play and the real impact on real people, we can start to imagine a better way forward. And so as we watch the debt collection machine fire back up, let's not lose sight of the bigger picture. This isn't just about collecting debts, it's about what kind of society we want to be and what values we want to prioritize. Do we want to be a society that punishes people for pursuing education, or do we want to be one that invests in its citizens and their potential? The answer to that question will shape not just our approach to student loans, but our future as a nation. There's also something that often gets overlooked in these discussions: the psychological toll of student debt. It's not just a financial burden, it's a mental one too. Studies have shown that student debt is associated with higher levels of stress, anxiety, and even depression. It affects major life decisions like when to get married, whether to have children, and when to buy a home. For many borrowers, student debt isn't just a monthly bill, it's a cloud that hangs over every aspect of their lives. I recently came across a Reddit thread where borrowers were sharing their experiences with student debt. One comment stood out to me: I've been paying for 12 years and owe more than I started with. I'll never own a home. I'll never retire. I did everything right, went to college, got a job in my field, make my payments every month, and I'm still drowning. This isn't an isolated experience. It's the reality for millions of Americans who did exactly what society told them to do, get an education only to find themselves trapped in a cycle of debt they can't escape. And now, with involuntary collections restarting, that psychological burden is about to get even heavier for those in default. Imagine the stress of knowing that at any moment your wages could be garnished or your tax refund seized. It's a form of financial insecurity that can be paralyzing. This brings me to a crucial point about the restart of involuntary collections. It treats all defaults the same, regardless of the circumstances that led to them. Whether you're a graduate of a predatory private college or someone who had to drop out due to a medical emergency, the government's approach is the same: pay up or we'll take it from you. To hell with how you feel about it or how much you make. I think there's a better way. Instead of a one-size-fits-all approach to collections, we could develop more nuanced policies that take into account the circumstances of the default. Borrowers who were defrauded by their schools should have a clear path to loan forgiveness. Those facing temporary hardship should have better options for deferment or forbearance. And perhaps most importantly, we need to address the root causes of the student loan crisis: skyrocketing tuition costs, predatory lending practices, and a job market that often doesn't provide the returns on education that were promised. But instead, we're seeing a return to a punitive approach that treats all defaulted borrowers as irresponsible regardless of their circumstances. It's an approach that ignores the complexity of the problem and the real human costs involved. Practically speaking, when your wages are garnished for student loan debt, up to 15% of your disposable income can be taken directly from your paycheck. For someone living paycheck to paycheck, that can be the difference between making rent and facing eviction. When your tax refund is seized, you lose what for many low-income families is the largest single payment they receive all year, money that often goes toward essential expenses or paying down other debts. And when your Social Security benefits are garnished, you're losing income that was meant to support you in retirement, a time when you have few other options for increasing your income. These aren't just financial inconveniences, they're potentially life-altering events that can push people already on the edge into financial catastrophe. Is an aggressive approach that can push people into financial ruin really the most effective or humane strategy? Research suggests it may not even be the most financially sound approach. When borrowers are pushed into financial crisis by aggressive collection tactics, they're less likely to be able to repay their debts in the long run. It's a short-sighted strategy that prioritizes immediate recovery over sustainable repayment. Is that really the system we want? One that punishes people for trying to improve their circumstances through education? Over the past few decades, college tuition has increased at a rate far exceeding inflation or wage growth. At public four-year institutions, tuition has more than doubled in real terms since the 1980s. At private institutions, the increase has been even more dramatic. What's driving these increases? It's a complex question with no single answer. Declining state funding for public universities plays a role. So does the amenities arms race. The competition among schools to offer the fanciest facilities and services to attract students. Administrative bloat is another factor, with the number of administrators growing far faster than the number of faculty. But whatever the causes, the result is clear. Higher education has become increasingly unaffordable without taking on significant debt, and as tuition rises, so does the amount students need to borrow, creating a vicious cycle that shows no sign of slowing. When we talk about the student loan crisis, we rarely focus on the responsibility of institutions to control costs and provide value for money. Instead, the burden falls entirely on borrowers, who are expected to pay whatever price is asked, no matter how unreasonable. But making this shift requires challenging deeply held beliefs about personal responsibility and the role of government. It requires acknowledging that the current system isn't working for millions of Americans, and that tweaking around the edges won't be enough to fix it. On May 5th, the Department of Education will restart involuntary collections for defaulted loans. This means wage garnishments, tax refund seizures, and even garnishment of Social Security benefits. For borrowers already living on the edge financially, this could be devastating. Imagine having 15% of your paycheck suddenly disappear, or losing a tax refund you were counting on to catch up on bills or make necessary repairs. We need to rethink how we fund higher education, how we structure student loans, and how we support borrowers in repayment. We need to hold institutions accountable for the outcomes of their students and ensure that they're providing value for the tuition they charge. And perhaps most importantly, we need to shift our thinking about education from a private good that benefits individuals to a public good that benefits society as a whole. Until we make these broader changes, we'll continue to see cycles of crisis and temporary relief with borrowers caught in the middle. So as we watch the debt collection machine fire back up, let's not lose sight of the bigger picture. This isn't just about collecting debts, it's about creating a system that makes education accessible and affordable for all who seek it. Because in the end, that's what this is really about. Not just dollars and cents, but the kind of society we want to be and the opportunities we want to provide for all our citizens. The student loan crisis didn't happen overnight, and it won't be solved overnight either. But by understanding the forces at play and the real impact on real people, we can start to imagine and work toward a better way forward.